In a small town in America, Jasmine Carter had just turned 28 and was on the cusp of making her mark as a newly minted lawyer. Having grown up in a working-class neighborhood, she was acutely aware of the injustices that plagued her community. The memory of her father's wrongful accusation of a crime when she was a teenager haunted her. She had watched him battle against the system, enduring humiliation and despair as he fought for his innocence. That experience ignited a fierce determination in Jasmine to pursue a career in law, driven by a desire to advocate for those who couldn't advocate for themselves. Jasmine was passionate, fearless, and unyielding in her pursuit of justice. She had earned her law degree through hard work and resilience, and her friends often remarked that she was destined for greatness. After a long week at her law firm, she was excited to head home on a Friday evening, looking forward to a weekend of peace and reflection. Her car, a modest sedan, was a symbol of her practicality, reliable and unpretentious. As she drove through a quiet residential neighborhood, the soothing rhythm of the road was abruptly interrupted by the flashing blue lights of a police car in her rearview mirror. Confused and anxious, she pulled over to the side of the road. She hadn't been speeding or violating any traffic laws, so she couldn't understand why she was being stopped. Rolling down her window, Jasmine watched as Officer Thompson approached her vehicle. He was a tall, white man in his late 40s, with a hardened expression that seemed to reflect years of enforcing the law without compassion. "License and registration," he commanded, his tone sharp and authoritative. "Is there a problem, officer?" Jasmine asked, keeping her voice steady despite the rising tension in her chest. "Step out of the car," Thompson ordered, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "Why?" Jasmine questioned, her heart racing but her demeanor calm. "Don't question me. Step out of the car now," he snapped, his hand moving toward his holster in a menacing gesture. Jasmine felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She understood the gravity of the situation. Complying, she stepped out of the car, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. "You match the description of someone we're looking for," Thompson stated, scrutinizing her as if she were a criminal. "What description is that?" Jasmine asked, her voice steady yet incredulous. "A black woman driving a car that doesn't seem like hers," he replied bluntly, his words dripping with prejudice. Jasmine froze, disbelief washing over her. "Excuse me? You heard me. What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I live here," she asserted, her voice firm despite the fear gnawing at her. "Sure you do. Let's see what's in the trunk," he said, striding toward her car without waiting for her consent. Humiliated and enraged, Jasmine knew this was illegal. "Officer, you have no probable cause to search my vehicle," she asserted, her voice rising with indignation. Thompson turned to her, his face contorted with anger. "Are you a lawyer or something?" "As a matter of fact, I am," she replied, her tone now imbued with a newfound strength. This only seemed to infuriate him further. "Yeah, well, let's see if being a lawyer helps you now." He grabbed her arm roughly and twisted it behind her back. Jasmine winced in pain but didn't cry out, fully aware that showing any sign of resistance could escalate the situation. Resisting arrest, Thompson muttered as he tightened the handcuffs around her wrists. At the police station, Jasmine was booked and placed in a holding cell. She felt a mix of disbelief and despair as she sat there, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on her surroundings. Hours passed, and she replayed the events in her mind over and over. She hadn't done anything wrong, yet here she was, treated like a criminal. But Jasmine was not the kind of person to back down, she knew she had to fight back. The next morning, she reached out to her friend and colleague, Alex Rivera, a civil rights attorney known for his unwavering commitment to justice. Alex listened intently as Jasmine recounted every detail of the incident, his expression growing more serious with each word. "This is completely unacceptable," he said firmly. "We're taking this to court." Jasmine nodded resolutely. "Not just for me, but for everyone who has faced this kind of injustice." This isn't just about my case, it's about a systemic issue that continues to affect countless lives. Over the following weeks, Jasmine and Alex worked tirelessly to build their case. They gathered evidence, including surveillance footage from nearby businesses that showed Thompson searching her car without any legal grounds. They also interviewed other individuals who had filed complaints against Thompson, revealing a disturbing pattern of racial profiling and abuse of power. Each testimony added weight to their case, painting a picture of a man who had consistently abused his authority. As the trial date approached, Jasmine felt a mix of anxiety and determination. The courtroom was an intimidating place, but she knew that this was her chance to make her voice heard. On the day of the trial, she wore a professional suit that exuded confidence, but inside, she was apprehensive. Officer Thompson sat in the defendant's chair, his demeanor cold and unrepentant. When it was Jasmine's turn to testify, she took a deep breath and stepped onto the stand. The room fell silent as she began recounting the events of that night, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "I was treated like a criminal for no reason other than the color of my skin," she declared, her words resonating with the jury. "This wasn't just an abuse of power, it was an attack on my humanity. I am not just a statistic, I am a person deserving of respect and dignity." Alex presented the evidence with skill and precision, leaving no doubt about Thompson's misconduct. The jury listened intently, their faces reflecting a mix of anger and sympathy. When Thompson took the stand, his arrogance was evident. He showed no remorse, insisting he had done nothing wrong, but the evidence against him was overwhelming, and his demeanor only served to alienate him further in the eyes of the jury. After days of intense deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Jasmine sat in her seat, her heart racing as the foreman stood to announce the decision. "We find the defendant, Officer Thompson, guilty of violating the civil rights of Jasmine Carter." A wave of relief washed over her as the verdict sank in. Thompson was ordered to pay significant damages and was dismissed from the police force. An investigation was launched into his past conduct, ensuring that he would face consequences for his actions. Months later, Jasmine received a heartfelt letter from a young woman who had seen her story on the news. "Because of you, I know it's okay to fight back," the letter read. Tears filled Jasmine's eyes as she folded the letter, knowing that her struggle had ignited a spark of hope in someone else. With each passing day, Jasmine became more committed to her work as a lawyer. She took on more cases, advocating for those whose voices had been silenced. She held workshops in her community, educating people about their rights and encouraging them to stand up against injustice. Her story inspired countless others to speak out, and she became a beacon of hope for those seeking change. As she continued her journey, Jasmine understood that the fight for justice was far from over. She faced challenges and setbacks, but her resolve only grew stronger. Every case she took on, every voice she helped amplify, was a step toward a more equitable society. Jasmine knew that her story was just one of many in a system that often failed its citizens. But she was determined to keep fighting, not just for herself, but for everyone who needed someone to stand up and say, "Enough is enough." In her heart, she carried the weight of her father's struggle and the hope of future generations, fueling her passion and commitment to creating a better world.